Maggie didn't know the stranger occupying the corner table was one of the wealthiest ranch owners in Montana Territory. She didn't know he'd been watching her for 3 nights straight, trying to determine if she was the solution to his desperate problem or just another false lead. And she definitely didn't know that serving him one final whiskey would unravel every secret she'd spent 6 years protecting. All she knew was that if she didn't get the Silver Dollar Saloon closed within the next 10 minutes, old Pete would dock her wages again, and she couldn't afford to lose another cent. The last patron had stumbled out an hour earlier, leaving behind sticky whiskey rings and the sour smell of too much liquor. Maggie worked methodically, wiping down tables with practiced efficiency, her back aching from 12 hours on her feet. The Silver Dollar wasn't much, a squat timber building wedged between a leather goods shop and a blacksmith's forge. But it was hers in all the ways that mattered. She knew every loose floorboard, every crack in the plaster, every customer's usual order. She was wringing out her rag when she heard it, the soft scrape of wood against stone. Maggie's head snapped up. The corner booth, the one she'd cleaned 20 minutes ago, was occupied. A man sat in the shadows, so still she might have mistaken him for a trick of the lamplight, if not for his eyes. Even from across the room, they caught what little light remained, reflecting it back with predatory intensity. Her pulse kicked up. The door was locked. She'd checked it herself, sliding the heavy bolt home with her own hands, which meant he'd been here the whole time, sitting in silence while she worked. "We're closed," Maggie said, keeping her voice steady. She dealt with enough handsy drunks and aggressive strangers to know better than to show fear. "You need to leave." The man didn't move. One last drink. His voice was low, rough-edged, the kind that made her think of winter storms and dangerous trails. "I said we're closed." He leaned forward slightly, and the lamplight finally found his face. Maggie's breath caught. He was striking in the way dangerous men often were, all sharp angles and controlled power, with dark hair that fell past his collar and a jaw carved from granite. But it was his eyes that held her. Steel gray like storm clouds before a lightning strike, carrying a weight she couldn't name. Exhaustion, maybe, or desperation wrapped in iron control. "Please," he said, and that single word made her hesitate. There was no threat in it, no demand, just a simple request that somehow cut through every defensive instinct she'd honed over the years. Maggie's first thought was to refuse, to call for the night marshal or grab the rifle Pete kept behind the bar. Instead, she found herself saying, "What are you drinking?" "Whiskey, straight." She moved behind the bar, hyper-aware of his gaze tracking her movements. Her hands were steady as she poured. She'd done this thousands of times. But something felt different tonight, like the air before a thunderstorm. When she brought the glass to his table, he wrapped his fingers around it without drinking. Just held it, studying the amber liquid like it contained answers. She studied him more closely, the set of his shoulders, the way shadows fell across his face, and recognition sparked. The past 3 nights. Always the same corner booth. Never causing trouble. Never speaking to anyone. Just watching her. "You've been here before," Maggie said slowly, the realization sending a shiver down her spine. "Yes." His eyes lifted to hers, and the intensity in them made her want to step back. But she held her ground, meeting his gaze even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm looking for someone," he said finally. "Well, there's nobody here but me and you." Something flickered across his face, gone before she could read it. "May I ask you something?" Maggie crossed her arms. "You can ask. Doesn't mean I'll answer." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. Fair enough. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Do you have experience protecting people? Keeping them safe from threats they can't see coming? Every instinct Maggie had developed over 6 years of hiding screamed at her to lie, to laugh it off as ridiculous, to play the simple saloon girl who knew nothing about violence or vigilance. But something in his expression stopped her. He looked like a man bracing for disappointment but asking anyway. "Who's asking?" she said softly. "Someone who needs help protecting his daughter," he said, taking a drink finally. When he set the glass down, his hand was steady. "Someone who's been targeted by people who want to destroy everything he's built. I need someone who can stay close, watch for danger, someone who won't be obvious." "There are plenty of hired guns in Timber Falls," Maggie said carefully. "Plenty of men who'll take your money to stand guard." "I don't need obvious muscle," he replied. "I need someone smart, someone who can blend in, someone who knows how to read danger before it strikes." He paused. "And I've been told you have those particular skills." Maggie's mouth went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." He didn't sound accusatory, just certain. "You've been hiding who you really are your whole life, being careful never to let anyone see the woman beneath the disguise. My past is my own business." "I know," and he sounded like he meant it. "But I also know you served as a Pinkerton agent before you disappeared 6 years ago, that you were one of the best protection operatives they had, and that you vanished after a job went wrong." He leaned forward. "I need that woman. Not for vengeance, not for violence, just for protection. My daughter's life depends on it." Maggie's vision blurred. How did he know? She'd been so careful, so meticulous about erasing every trace of who she'd been. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Her voice came out rougher than intended. "How do I know you're not someone who'd use this information against me?" He leaned back, shadows playing across his features. "You don't. You'll have to decide whether to trust me." "That's not a strong argument." "No," he agreed. "But I'm tired of lies, and I suspect you are too." He reached into his coat and withdrew something small, a photograph, creased and worn. When he set it on the table, Maggie saw a young girl, maybe 8 years old, with bright eyes and a hopeful smile. "Her name is Emma," he said quietly. "She's my daughter. 10 years old now. Someone's been sending threats, letters describing exactly how they'll hurt her, when they'll strike, what they'll do." His fingers tightened on the glass. "I need someone who can stay close to her without raising suspicion. Someone who can be a governess, a companion, someone non-threatening. And when danger comes, someone who can actually protect her." Maggie stared at the photograph. The girl's innocent smile cut straight through her defenses. "And if I help you," she said slowly, "what happens when people find out what I really am? What I did before?" "They won't. I'll make sure of it." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." The absolute certainty in his voice made her look up. "Because I'm Jacob Thornton. I own the largest cattle operation in Montana Territory. I have resources, connections, and enough power to protect you from anyone who might come looking." Her world tilted sideways. Maggie had heard the name. Everyone had. The rancher who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd negotiated water rights with the railroad and won, who commanded respect from every cattleman from here to Wyoming. "It's you," she breathed. Jacob inclined his head. "It's me. Why have you been sitting here for 3 nights? You could have just sent someone to fetch me, ordered me to your ranch." "I could have," he agreed, "but I wanted to observe you first, see if what I'd heard was true. And I wanted you to have a choice." Maggie laughed, sharp and bitter. "A choice. The wealthiest rancher in the territory asks for help, and I'm supposed to believe I can refuse?" Something shifted in his expression. She'd braced herself for anger at her tone, but what she saw instead was something far more disarming. Hurt, raw and unguarded, flickering across his face before he shuttered it away behind that iron control. "I'm asking, Maggie, not ordering. There's a difference." The vulnerability in his voice, quiet, almost resigned, made her chest ache in a way she hadn't anticipated. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Come to my ranch. 3 months, no more. Stay close to Emma. Teach her, protect her, watch for the threats I know are coming. In exchange, I'll pay you $500, gold, and when the 3 months are done, you're free to go wherever you want. No strings attached." Maggie's heart stuttered. $500 was more money than she'd see in 2 years of serving drinks. With that kind of money, she could disappear completely, start fresh somewhere nobody would ever find her. "And after 3 months, I can just walk away? You have my word." His eyes held hers. "I won't trap you, Maggie. Whatever you decide, you walk away when it's done." She looked at the photograph again. Thought about a 10-year-old girl living with death threats. Thought about her own past, the people she'd protected, the lives she'd saved before everything fell apart. Thought about the life she'd been living, hiding, serving drinks, belonging to Pete in all the ways that mattered even if the law called it employment. 3 months, she said firmly, "and then I want the gold and my freedom. You have my word. I want a blood oath." Jacob's eyebrows rose slightly. "You don't trust easily." "I've learned not to." He pulled a knife from his belt, a beautiful thing with an elk horn handle and a blade that caught the lamplight. Without hesitation, he drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark in the dim light. He offered his hand. Maggie took the knife with shaking fingers and made her own cut. The pain was sharp, immediate. When she pressed her palm to his, she felt it, a shock of recognition that went bone deep, like her body had somehow been waiting for this contact her entire life. Power flared between them, sealing the oath. But beneath it, wrapped around it, she felt something else, something that made her skin prickle and her breath catch. Recognition, connection. The kind her grandmother had told her about in whispered stories. The kind that only happened once in a lifetime. If you were lucky, or cursed. Jacob's hand tightened on hers, his eyes widening slightly. Did he feel it too? Neither of them spoke. After a moment that stretched too long, he released her hand and pulled a clean bandana from his pocket, tearing it in half. He offered her a piece first, waiting until she took it before wrapping his own palm, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice rougher than before. "I'll send someone to collect you at dawn." "I have work." "Already handled." He stood, and she realized just how tall he was, how much space he occupied, even when trying not to be intimidating. "Pack whatever you need. Bring everything important. You won't be coming back." He left through the front door this time, stepping into the night like a ghost. Maggie stood in the empty saloon, staring at her bandaged palm, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The handshake that would change everything. Dawn came too quickly. Maggie had barely slept, her mind spinning through possibilities and fears. She'd packed her few belongings, 2 dresses, a brush that had been her mother's, a small derringer she kept hidden, and the faded photograph of a life she'd left behind 6 years ago. She sat by her window watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pale gold, trying not to think about the connection she'd felt when their palms touched. Trying not to remember how Jacob Thornton's eyes had looked in the lamplight, determined and desperate and somehow lonely, despite all his power. The knock, when it came, was polite but firm. She opened the door to find a woman in practical riding clothes, her expression kind but assessing. "Miss Maggie? I'm Sarah. Mr. Thornton sent me to escort you to the ranch." "I need to tell Pete." "Already handled." Sarah's tone was respectful but final. "Your wages have been settled through the month and your room here has been paid. You're free to leave." Just like that. No arguments. No negotiations. Jacob Thornton clearly didn't do anything halfway. Maggie followed Sarah through the waking town, acutely aware of the stares they attracted. She wasn't dressed for traveling with ranch employees, just her usual brown calico dress and a patched shawl. But Sarah didn't seem to care. They walked to the edge of town, where 2 horses waited. Sarah mounted one with practiced ease, and a younger man held the reins of a beautiful sorrel mare. "That's Copper," Sarah said. "She's gentle. Just follow our lead." The ride took 3 hours. They left the main trail after the first hour, following paths that wound through pine forests and across meadows still wet with morning dew. The land grew wilder, more beautiful, until Maggie felt like she'd stepped into a different world entirely. Then the trees opened up, and she saw it. The Thornton Ranch sprawled across a valley like something from a dream. The main house was massive, 2 stories of whitewashed timber and stone with a wraparound porch and windows that caught the morning sun. Outbuildings dotted the landscape, barns, bunkhouses, corrals filled with horses. In the distance, cattle grazed on grassland that seemed to stretch forever. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. The kind of beauty that represented everything she'd never had: stability, permanence, home. They crossed a wooden bridge over a clear stream. Inside the ranch yard, the place bustled with activity. Cowboys tending horses, women hanging laundry, children playing near a chicken coop. Everyone moved with purpose, but there was an ease to it. These people weren't afraid. Sarah led her through the front entrance into a house that smelled of coffee and fresh bread. The interior was warm, polished wood floors, comfortable furniture, and curtains that softened the abundant light streaming through windows. "Mr. Thornton is in his study," Sarah said. "But first, let me show you your room." They climbed a wide staircase to the 2nd floor. Sarah opened a door near the end of the hall, revealing a space larger than Maggie's entire room above the saloon had been. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, covered in a beautiful quilt. A wardrobe stood open, already containing several dresses far nicer than anything Maggie owned. "These are for you," Sarah said, noticing Maggie's stare. "Mr. Thornton said you'd need appropriate clothing for the position." "Position?" "Governess and companion to Emma." Sarah smiled. "You'll be taking your meals with the family, attending social functions when needed. The clothes are part of maintaining the cover." Maggie ran her fingers over the fabric of the nearest dress. Deep green cotton, simple but well made. "This is too much." "Mr. Thornton doesn't do anything by halves." Sarah moved toward the door. "Freshen up. I'll come get you in 30 minutes to meet Emma." After Sarah left, Maggie sank onto the bed, feeling overwhelmed. The room was beautiful. The house was beautiful. Everything here represented a life she'd never imagined for herself. She thought about Jacob Thornton's face in the lamplight, the way he'd cut his palm without hesitation, the way that connection had sparked between them, undeniable and terrifying. 3 months, she reminded herself. Just 3 months and then you're gone. But even as she thought it, Part of her wondered if leaving would be as simple as she hoped. Sarah returned exactly 30 minutes later, leading Maggie downstairs to a sunlit parlor. And there she was. Emma Thornton sat by the window, a book in her lap, dark hair braided down her back. She looked up when they entered, and Maggie saw intelligence in those brown eyes, intelligence and wariness beyond her years. "Emma, this is Miss Maggie," Sarah said gently. "She'll be staying with us for a while." "Another governess." Emma's voice was quiet, measured. "Father's hired 3 in the past year." "I heard the others didn't work out," Maggie said, keeping her tone conversational. "They left." Emma set down her book. "After they got the letters." Sarah's expression tightened. "Emma, we've talked about this." "It's all right," Maggie interrupted. She moved closer, crouching so she was at Emma's eye level. "I know about the threats. Your father told me." Emma's eyes widened. "And you still came?" "I did." "Why?" Such a simple question, but loaded with confusion and hope. "The others were scared. They packed up and left the same day the letters arrived." Maggie chose her words carefully. "Because I'm not easily scared. And because I don't think little girls should have to be afraid in their own homes." Emma studied her for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. "Father said you were different." "He talks about me?" "He said you were brave." Emma's smile grew. "He said you were someone who'd actually stay." Before Maggie could respond, a voice came from the doorway. "I also said you shouldn't interrogate her within 5 minutes of arrival." Jacob Thornton stood there, changed from last night. Gone were the dark traveling clothes, replaced by clean work shirt and trousers. His hair was still damp, like he'd recently washed. When his eyes found Maggie's, that same intensity from the saloon returned, but somehow warmer in daylight. "Papa!" Emma jumped up and ran to him. He caught her easily, swinging her up despite her age. "How's my girl?" "Good." "I like her already." Emma looked at Maggie over her father's shoulder. "She's not afraid." "I told you she wouldn't be." Jacob set Emma down gently. "Why don't you show Miss Maggie the library? I'll bet she'd like to see your book collection." "Really?" Emma's face lit up. "Really?" Emma grabbed Maggie's hand, pulling her toward the hall. Maggie glanced back to see Jacob watching them, expression unreadable. The library was spectacular, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books, comfortable chairs by the fireplace, windows overlooking the mountains. Emma immediately began pulling volumes down, talking rapidly about her favorites. Maggie listened, watching the girl's animated face, and felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a job. This child needed protection, yes. But she also needed someone who'd see her as more than a problem to be solved. "Do you like to read?" Emma asked suddenly. "I do," Maggie admitted, "though I haven't had much time for it lately." "You can borrow any of these." Emma gestured broadly. "Father says books should be shared, not hoarded." "That's generous of him." Emma grew quiet, tracing the spine of a volume she held. "He's lonely, you know. Since Mama died 3 years ago. He tries to hide it, but I can tell." Maggie's throat tightened. "I'm sorry about your mother." "Me too." Emma looked up, eyes suspiciously bright. "The letters started 6 months ago. Father thinks they're connected to business rivals, people who want our water rights or our land." She paused. "But I think they're from the same people who killed Mama." Ice ran down Maggie's spine. "Emma! She was thrown from her horse. Everyone said it was an accident." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "But I saw the saddle afterward, before Father made them burn it. The girth had been cut, not all the way through." Just enough to fail at the right moment. Maggie knelt in front of the girl. Does your father know you saw that? Emma shook her head. I was 8. I didn't understand what it meant until later. You need to tell him. I can't. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. He's already so worried, already trying so hard to keep me safe. If he knew I'd figured it out, if he knew I was scared. Maggie pulled the girl into a hug. Listen to me. Your father hired me to protect you. I can't do that properly if you're keeping secrets, even scary ones. Emma clung to her. Will you tell him? We'll tell him together, Maggie promised. When you're ready. They stayed like that until Emma's tears subsided. When they finally separated, the girl wiped her eyes and managed a wobbly smile. I'm glad you came, Miss Maggie. Me too, sweetheart. That night, after Emma was in bed, Maggie found Jacob on the front porch, staring out at the darkening landscape. She likes you, he said without turning around. She doesn't usually warm up to people that quickly. She's a special girl. Maggie joined him at the railing. Smart, observant. Too observant sometimes. Jacob's jaw tightened. She shouldn't have to be watching for danger at her age. No, she shouldn't. Maggie paused, choosing her words carefully. Jacob, there's something you should know. About Emma. About what she saw. She told him everything. The saddle, the cut girth, Emma's fears. With each word, Jacob's expression grew harder, more dangerous. When she finished, he gripped the railing so hard his knuckles went white. She's known for 2 years. She's been carrying that fear alone. She didn't want to burden you. She's my daughter. His voice broke. She should never have to protect me from the truth. Maggie put her hand over his. The contact sent that same spark through both of them, undeniable and electric. You can talk to her tomorrow. She'll tell you when she's ready. Jacob looked down at their joined hands. This thing between us. You feel it too? It wasn't a question. Yes. I don't understand it. Neither do I. Maggie should pull her hand away, should maintain professional distance, but she didn't. My grandmother used to tell stories about connections like this. Soul-deep recognition. She said it was rare, special, or dangerous, Jacob said quietly. Maybe both. They stood in comfortable silence, hands still touching, watching stars emerge as darkness deepened. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly. Night birds called to each other. The ranch breathed its familiar rhythms. I should go, Maggie said, but made no move to leave. Or you could stay. Jacob's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Just for a while longer. So she did. 3 days into Maggie's stay, the first letter arrived. She was in the schoolroom with Emma, working through arithmetic problems, when Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Mr. Thornton needs to see you, she said quietly. Both of you. In his study. Emma's hand tightened on her pencil. It's another one, isn't it? Sarah didn't answer, which was answer enough. Jacob's study was lined with maps and ledgers, the workspace of a man who ran an empire. He stood by the window, holding a piece of paper, his expression carved from stone. Emma, sweetheart, why don't you wait with Sarah in the hall for a moment? His voice was carefully controlled. Papa, I'm not a baby. I know. He crossed to her, crouching down. But I need to talk to Miss Maggie first, just for a few minutes. Can you do that for me? Emma looked between them, then nodded reluctantly. Sarah let her out, closing the door softly. The moment they were alone, Jacob's control cracked. He handed Maggie the letter, his hand shaking slightly. The words were written in crude block letters. Your daughter rides every morning at dawn. Beautiful copper mare. So many things could happen on those empty trails. Accidents are common in ranch country. Maggie's blood ran cold. They know her routine. They've been watching. Jacob's voice was rough with fury. Close enough to know details. The mare's color, her riding schedule. Which means they have access to the ranch or someone watching from the hills. Maggie's mind raced, training kicking in automatically. Have you noticed anyone unfamiliar? Any new hands hired recently? No, everyone here has been with me for years. Jacob ran a hand through his hair. But someone could be watching from a distance. The hills provide plenty of cover. The other letters, did they contain this level of detail? Jacob opened a drawer, pulled out 3 more envelopes. Maggie read through them quickly, her stomach knotting with each one. Each letter had grown progressively more specific, more threatening. The most recent, before this one, had described the exact dress Emma had worn to church the previous Sunday. They're escalating, Maggie said. Testing your defenses, watching for your reaction. What do I do? Jacob looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. How do I protect her when I don't even know who's threatening us? Maggie set down the letters. First, we change Emma's routines. No more predictable schedules. She doesn't ride alone, and we vary the times. Second, we need to figure out who's watching, which means we need to watch back. You think you can spot them? I was trained to spot surveillance. Maggie moved to the window, scanning the distant hills. If someone's out there regularly, they'll have established patterns. Favorite vantage points. We find those, we might find them. And then? Then we deal with them. She met his eyes. I need to be clear about something, Jacob. If it comes down to it, if someone tries to hurt Emma, I won't hesitate. I'll do whatever's necessary. Understanding flickered across his face. You're not just a protection operative. No. Maggie had never admitted this to anyone since she'd left the Pinkertons. I was their best shooter, their cleaner, the person they sent when negotiations failed and permanent solutions were required. You've killed before. Yes. She waited for judgment, for fear, for disgust. Instead, Jacob stepped closer. Good. His voice was fierce. Because I need someone who won't hesitate when my daughter's life is on the line. The relief that flooded through her was dizzying. Most people would be horrified. Most people haven't had their wife murdered and their daughter threatened. Jacob's hands framed her face. I'm not asking you to be gentle, Maggie. I'm asking you to keep Emma alive. Whatever that takes. She leaned into his touch, just slightly. I will. I promise you. I believe you. The air between them crackled with tension, fear and attraction and desperate hope all tangled together. For a moment, Maggie thought he might kiss her. Part of her wanted him to. Instead, he stepped back, control reasserting itself. We should tell Emma about the new precautions. Agreed. They called Emma back in. Jacob explained the changes. No more solo rides, varied schedules, staying close to the house, as gently as he could. Emma listened with the too serious expression Maggie was coming to recognize. Someone's watching me, Emma said flatly. Someone who wants to hurt me. We don't know their intentions for certain... Jacob started. Papa, don't. Emma's voice was small but firm. I'm not a child. I know what's happening. Jacob pulled her into a hug. I'm going to keep you safe, Emma. I promise. I know. She looked at Maggie over her father's shoulder. Miss Maggie will help. Yes, Maggie said. I will. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. She paced her room, mind churning through threat assessments and defensive strategies. Finally, she gave up on sleep and slipped downstairs, intending to make tea. She found Jacob in his study, poring over maps by lamplight. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprise flickering across his tired face. "Too much thinking." "Want company?" "Always." She joined him at the desk. He'd spread out a topographical map of the ranch and surrounding area, marking potential surveillance points with pencil. "These hills here," he pointed, "offer clear sightlines to the house and the main riding trails. If someone's watching, they're probably using this ridge." Maggie studied the map. "How many access points?" "3 main ones. But a man on horseback could find a dozen more if he knew the terrain." "Then we need to know it better than them." She grabbed a clean sheet of paper. "Tomorrow, I want to ride out with some of your hands. Survey these areas. Look for signs of recent activity, disturbed ground, abandoned campsites, anything that suggests regular presence." Jacob watched her work, something like admiration in his eyes. "You're good at this." "I had excellent training." Maggie sketched rough positions. "The Pinkertons taught me to think like both predator and prey." "Why did you leave?" The question was quiet, but it carried weight. Maggie set down her pencil. She'd known this question would come eventually. "A job went wrong, badly wrong." The memories threatened to pull her under, but she pushed through them. "I was protecting a banker's daughter. Young, engaged to be married, targeted by her fiancé's business rivals. I thought I had all the angles covered." "What happened?" "They didn't come after her directly. They went after her younger brother instead." Maggie's voice went flat, emotionless. The only way she could tell this story. "Used him as leverage. Said they'd release him if she called off the wedding. The family refused to negotiate. I advised them to pay. They ignored me." Jacob's hand found hers on the desk. "The boy was 12 years old. They sent him back piece by piece." She couldn't stop the tremor in her voice. "By the time they sent his head, the family had changed their minds. But it was too late." "God, Maggie. I hunted down everyone involved. Took me 3 months." She met his eyes. "I killed 7 men. Not in self-defense, not in the heat of the moment. I planned it, executed it, made sure they suffered." "Good," Jacob said fiercely. She blinked. "What?" "They deserved it. They murdered a child." His hand tightened on hers. "The fact that you made them suffer doesn't make you a monster. It makes you someone with a conscience." The Pinkertons didn't see it that way. Unauthorized kills, excessive force. They gave me a choice: resign quietly or face charges. She laughed bitterly. "I took the resignation." "And you've been hiding ever since?" "Yes, because if certain people knew I was still alive..." She trailed off. "They'd come for you." "Probably." Maggie looked at their joined hands. "Which is why getting involved with you and Emma is dangerous for everyone. If my past catches up with me, then we'll deal with it together." Jacob's voice was absolute. "You're not alone anymore, Maggie." The certainty in his words made her chest ache. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe she could have this. Protection instead of hiding. Partnership instead of isolation. 3 months, she reminded him. Reminded herself. "I know." But his thumb traced circles on her palm, and neither of them pulled away. They sat together in the lamplight, holding hands like teenagers, until exhaustion finally claimed them both. Maggie rode out the next morning with 2 of Jacob's most trusted hands. Tom, a weathered cowboy who'd worked the ranch for 20 years, and Miguel, younger but sharp-eyed and cautious. They spent 4 hours surveying the hills, looking for evidence of surveillance. Maggie taught them what to watch for: disturbed vegetation, horse droppings in unusual locations, sight lines that offered the best views. It was Miguel who found it. "Miss Maggie, you should see this." He dismounted on a rocky outcrop overlooking the ranch. Maggie joined him, and her stomach dropped. Someone had been here recently. The ground showed clear signs: boot prints, a disturbed area where someone had sat for extended periods, cigarette butts scattered near a flat rock that provided a perfect natural bench, and carved into the rock, fresh and crude: "Soon." "Son of a bitch," Tom muttered. Maggie crouched, studying the boot prints. Size 10, maybe 11. Worn heel on the right boot. She committed the details to memory. "How recent?" Miguel asked. "Yesterday, possibly today." Maggie examined the cigarette butts. "They're not weathered. This person has been here multiple times, but they were definitely here within the last day. Should we wait? Try to catch them?" Tom's hand drifted toward his rifle. "No." Maggie stood. "If we wait, we tip our hand. They'll know we found their spot and move somewhere else. Better to let them think they're still hidden." "So what do we do?" Miguel looked frustrated. "We set a trap." Back at the ranch, Maggie explained her plan to Jacob. "We make it look like Emma's routine has returned to normal," she said, sketching positions on the map. "She rides out at her usual time tomorrow morning, but it won't actually be Emma." Jacob's eyes widened. "You want to use a decoy?" "Me." Maggie met his gaze steadily. "I'm the right height, similar build. From a distance, wearing Emma's riding cloak, I'll pass for her. Meanwhile, your men position themselves here, here, and here." She marked the map. "When our watcher shows up to observe Emma, we close in from multiple directions." "It's dangerous." Jacob's voice was tight. "If they're armed, I'll be armed too. And I'll have cover." Maggie placed her hand over his. "This is what I do, Jacob. It's who I am." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm coming with you." "No. Maggie, Emma needs you here. If this goes wrong, she can't lose both of us." Maggie's voice softened. "Please, Jacob, trust me to do this." The conflict on his face nearly broke her resolve, but finally he nodded. "Be careful. Always." Dawn came cold and gray. Maggie dressed in Emma's riding clothes, the dark blue cloak billowing around her. She'd braided her hair the way Emma wore it, kept her hat low to obscure her face. The copper mare, Copper, seemed to sense something different but accepted Maggie's guidance. They rode out along Emma's usual trail, Maggie acutely aware of the hills rising on her left. 20 minutes into the ride, she felt it. That prickling awareness that came from being watched. Years of training had honed this instinct. She knew when eyes were on her. She continued riding, giving no indication she'd noticed anything. But her right hand drifted toward the rifle in her saddle holster. From the corner of her eye, she caught movement. A figure on the ridge, partially concealed behind rocks, watching. Maggie gave a subtle hand signal, the one she'd arranged with Tom and Miguel. 3 quick movements that looked like adjusting her reins but meant target acquired. She continued riding toward a copse of trees they'd selected for the ambush. Once there, she'd dismount, the men would close in and they'd have their watcher trapped. But the figure on the ridge moved, suddenly, quickly, disappearing behind the rocks. They'd been made. "Damn it," Maggie breathed. She spurred Copper forward, abandoning subtlety for speed. If the watcher reached their horse, they'd escape. She heard shouts behind her, Tom and Miguel breaking cover, racing to cut off the escape route. Maggie urged Copper up the rocky slope. the mare responding with surprising agility. She crested the ridge in time to see a man in dark clothes mounting a black horse. Their eyes met for a split second, his widening in recognition that this wasn't Emma. Then he was gone, the black horse racing across the rough terrain with desperate speed. Maggie pursued, but she knew it was hopeless. He had too much of a head start, and he knew these hills better than she did. Within minutes, he disappeared into a maze of canyons and forest. "Miss Maggie!" Tom caught up to her, Miguel close behind. "Did you see him?" "Yes. Male, average height, dark clothing, riding a black horse with a white star on its forehead." Maggie's mind cataloged details automatically. "He was waiting for Emma. When he realized it was me, he ran." "Which means he knows we're on to him," Miguel said grimly. "Or it means we just escalated this into something more dangerous." Maggie turned Copper back toward the ranch. "Come on. We need to get back to Emma." Jacob was waiting in the yard, Emma beside him looking small and frightened. The moment Maggie dismounted, Emma ran to her. "You're okay," the girl breathed. "Papa said you might get hurt." "I'm fine." Maggie hugged her quickly. "But we didn't catch him." "Tell me everything," Jacob demanded. In his study, Maggie recounted the encounter in precise detail. Jacob listened with increasing tension, his knuckles white as he gripped the desk edge. "So now they know we're actively hunting them," he said when she finished. "Yes. Which means they'll either back off or escalate." Maggie completed his thought. "In my experience, people who threaten children don't back off easily." Jacob's expression went cold. "Then we prepare for the worst." Over the next week, the ranch transformed into a fortress. Jacob hired additional security, men he trusted absolutely. They established rotating watch schedules, secured the perimeter, and implemented strict protocols for Emma's movements. Maggie stayed close to the girl almost every waking moment. They established signals, subtle gestures that meant danger, all clear, hide now. Emma learned them quickly, her intelligence making her an apt student despite the grim nature of the lessons. Nights found Maggie and Jacob on the front porch again, sharing quiet conversations under the stars. The connection between them deepened with each passing day. Not just the inexplicable pull they'd felt from the beginning, but genuine understanding and respect. "Tell me about yourself," Jacob said one evening. "Not the operative part, the woman beneath." Maggie considered deflecting, but found she didn't want to. "I grew up in Missouri. Father was a doctor, mother was a school teacher. They wanted me to be respectable, marry well, have children. But you had other ideas." "I was restless, bored by the prospect of tea parties and proper society." She smiled at the memory. "Then when I was 16, our house was robbed. 3 men armed, demanding my father's money and medicines." "What did you do?" "I shot 2 of them." The words came out matter of fact. "The 3rd ran. My father was horrified. My mother fainted. But a Pinkerton agent who was visiting our town heard about it, tracked me down, and offered me training." "Your parents let you go?" "They didn't have much choice. I was going with or without their permission." Maggie's voice softened. "They died while I was working in California. A cholera outbreak. I didn't find out until 2 months after the funeral." Jacob's hand found hers. "I'm sorry." "Me too." She squeezed his fingers. "What about you? How did a ranch hand become one of the wealthiest men in Montana?" "I wasn't always wealthy." Jacob's voice went distant. "My father lost everything in a bad cattle venture when I was 12. We went from comfortable to nearly starving overnight. He died a broken man when I was 16. How did you rebuild?" "Slowly. Carefully. I worked every job I could find, saved every penny. Bought my first 10 head of cattle with money I'd saved for 3 years. Those 10 became 20, then 50. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I swore I'd never be poor again. Never be powerless like my father was at the end. And Emma's mother? Jacob went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. Sarah was the daughter of a neighboring rancher. We grew up together, got married young. She loved this place almost as much as I did. He paused. I didn't know about the cut girth until you told me. I should have seen it. Should have protected her. Jacob, you can't blame yourself. Can't I? His eyes were haunted. Someone murdered my wife and has been terrorizing my daughter for 6 months. That's on me. No. Maggie turned to face him fully. That's on whoever's doing this. You're not responsible for other people's evil. Then why does it feel like I failed them both? Because you're a good man who loves his family. She framed his face with her hands. But you didn't fail anyone? You hired me? You're fighting back. You're doing everything right. Jacob leaned his forehead against hers. I'm terrified of losing her. You won't. I won't let that happen. Promise me. His voice broke. Promise me you'll keep her safe. I promise. And Maggie meant it with every fiber of her being. Even if it cost you everything? Even then. Jacob pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly. They held each other in the darkness. Two damaged people finding unexpected comfort in impossible circumstances. Maggie, he whispered against her hair, this thing between us, I know. It's not just the oath. It's not just gratitude. I know, she repeated. What are we going to do about it? Maggie pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I don't know. All I know is that I was supposed to be here for 3 months and then disappear. But Jacob... Her voice caught. I don't think I can walk away from you, from Emma, from this. His eyes searched hers. Then don't. It's not that simple. My past, we'll face it together. You don't know what you're offering. I know exactly what I'm offering. Jacob's voice was fierce. I'm offering partnership, protection, a life here if you want it. He paused. I'm offering love, Maggie, because that's what this is. What it's been since that first night in the saloon. Maggie's heart hammered. Jacob. You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. The 3 months aren't even half over. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand that when this is done, I don't want you to leave. She kissed him, just leaned in and pressed her lips to his, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. He responded immediately, his arms tightening around her, the kiss deepening into something desperate and tender and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maggie pressed her forehead to his chest. Ask me again, she whispered, when Emma's safe, when the threats are ended. Ask me to stay and I'll give you my answer. I can work with that, Jacob said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other, until the night grew cold enough to drive them inside. The second month at the ranch passed in a rhythm of watchfulness and growing connection. No more letters arrived, which worried Maggie more than the threats had. Silence often meant planning. Emma bloomed under Maggie's protection. The fear never completely left her eyes, but she laughed more, played more, acted more like the 10-year-old she was supposed to be. She'd also become fiercely attached to Maggie, following her around like a small shadow. Do you think Miss Maggie will stay? Emma asked her father one evening at dinner, unaware that Maggie could hear from the hallway. "I don't know, sweetheart," Jacob replied quietly. "I hope so." "I hope so, too. I love her, Papa." The words hit Maggie square in the chest. She'd been careful not to get too attached, to maintain professional distance. But hearing Emma's simple declaration shattered every careful wall she'd built. She loved this child, too. And she loved the child's father, though she'd been trying desperately not to admit it. That realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. She was still processing that truth when Sarah found her in the hall. "Miss Maggie, there's someone at the gate asking for you." Ice ran down Maggie's spine. "Who?" "He says his name is James Peterson. Says he needs to speak with you urgently about your past." Maggie's world tilted sideways. James Peterson, her old handler from the Pinkertons, the man who'd given her the choice to resign. What was he doing here? "Where is he?" "Mr. Thornton has him in the front parlor. Under guard." Of course, Jacob would take precautions. Maggie hurried downstairs to find Jacob standing near the fireplace, arms crossed, while a middle-aged man with gray-streaked hair sat uncomfortably in an armchair. Two of Jacob's men flanked the doors. "Maggie?" James stood when he saw her. "Thank God. I've been looking for you for weeks." "Why?" Her voice came out harder than intended. "Because you're in danger. Serious danger." James glanced at Jacob. "Can we speak privately?" "Anything you say to her, you say in front of me," Jacob said flatly. James sighed. "Fair enough." He turned back to Maggie. "You remember the Callahan job? The banker's daughter?" How could she forget? The assignment that had ended her career. "What about it?" "The men you killed, the ones who murdered the boy, they had a boss. Someone funding the operation, pulling the strings." James pulled a folder from his coat. "His name is Marcus Brennan, railroad tycoon, legitimate on the surface, but running criminal operations underneath." "I know the name," Jacob said quietly. "He's been trying to buy my water rights for the past year." Maggie's blood ran cold. "What?" James nodded grimly. "Brennan's nephew was one of the men you killed, Maggie. His favorite nephew. He swore revenge. Spent 2 years tracking you down. And he found her." Jacob's voice was deadly quiet. "He found the town you were in," James confirmed. "Timber Falls. But he didn't know exactly where you were working until recently. One of his men recognized you serving drinks at the Silver Dollar Saloon. Here's the critical part. When Brennan learned Maggie was in proximity to Jacob Thornton, he saw an opportunity. The threats against Emma," Maggie breathed, "weren't random," James finished. "They were designed to make you reveal yourself, to force you out of hiding by targeting the people around you." Jacob moved to Maggie's side. "He's been threatening my daughter to get to her?" "Yes, and it worked. You hired her for protection, which put her exactly where Brennan wanted, close enough to hurt, while extracting maximum pain from you both." Maggie felt sick. "Sarah, your wife. He killed her to create the opening for the threats." Jacob's expression went stone cold. "Where is he?" "That's the problem. We don't know." James spread papers from the folder across the coffee table. "He's been operating through intermediaries. The man watching from the hills was hired muscle who doesn't even know who's paying him." "So what do we do?" Maggie's mind raced. "You disappear," James said bluntly. "Tonight. I'll set you up somewhere remote. Somewhere Brennan can never find you." "No." Both men looked at her. "I'm not running," Maggie said firmly. "I'm done hiding." "Maggie, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable." She looked at Jacob. "He killed your wife. He's been terrorizing your daughter. If I run, he'll just keep using Emma to punish me. The only way this ends is if we end him." Jacob's eyes held hers, and she saw understanding dawn. "You want to draw him out?" "Yes." "Absolutely not," James said. "Maggie, the man has unlimited resources. And I have something he wants. Me." Maggie's voice was cold, calculated. "We let him know I'm here. Make it easy for him to get to me. And when he comes, we'll be ready," Jacob finished. James looked between them. "This is insane." "No," Maggie said. "It's necessary. Will you help or not?" James was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You always were the most stubborn operative I ever trained. Fine. I'll help. But we do this smart. Controlled. With backup." Over the next 3 days, they planned. James had contacts, other Pinkerton agents who owed him favors, lawmen who'd been tracking Brennan for years. They came quietly, establishing positions around the ranch, preparing for the confrontation. Maggie spent the time with Emma, memorizing the girl's laugh, the way she scrunched her nose when concentrating, the softness of her hugs, just in case. "You're not going anywhere, are you?" Emma asked the third night, curled against Maggie's side while Maggie read aloud. Maggie's throat tightened. "What makes you say that?" "You keep looking at me like you're trying to remember. Adults only do that when they're going away." Too smart. This child was too smart for her own good. "I'm not planning on going anywhere," Maggie said carefully. "But Emma, you need to understand something. Sometimes life doesn't care about our plans. So you might leave." "Not by choice." Maggie set down the book and turned to face Emma fully. "Listen to me. If something happens, if I have to go away for any reason, I need you to know something. You are brave and strong and absolutely loved. Your father adores you, and Her voice caught. "I love you too, more than I thought possible." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Then don't leave." "I'm going to try my hardest not to." Maggie pulled her close. "I promise." That night, after Emma was asleep, Maggie found Jacob in his study. He was cleaning his rifle with methodical precision, his expression distant. "Tomorrow," he said without looking up. "Yes. Brennan will come himself. Men like him, when they want revenge badly enough, they do it personally." "I know." Jacob set down the rifle and finally met her eyes. "I'm terrified of losing you." "You won't." "You can't promise that." "No," Maggie admitted. "But I can promise I'll fight like hell to come back to you." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms with desperate intensity. "I should never have agreed to this plan. You didn't have a choice. Neither of us did." She cupped his face. "This is the only way, Jacob. You know that. Doesn't mean I have to like it." "No." She kissed him softly. "It doesn't." They made love that night with an urgency born of fear and need. Afterward, lying tangled together in his bed, Jacob traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "After this is over," he said quietly, "I'm asking you properly." "Asking me what?" "To stay. To marry me. To be Emma's mother and my wife and part of this place forever." Maggie's heart clenched. "Jacob." "I know," he interrupted gently. "You told me to ask when Emma was safe. So I'm telling you now, when this is done, that's what I'm going to do. And I want you thinking about your answer." "I already know my answer," Maggie whispered. "Tell me." "After," she said, "when we're both still here to celebrate it." He pulled her closer, and they lay in the darkness, holding each other through the long hours until dawn. They made it obvious. Maggie rode out alone the next morning, following the same trail where they'd first spotted the Watcher. No disguise this time, no pretense. Just her, visible and vulnerable. Except she wasn't vulnerable. Jacob's men were positioned throughout the hills, 12 sharp shooters, including James and several of his best agents, and Maggie herself carried 3 loaded pistols and enough ammunition to hold off a small army. She felt them before she saw them. 6 men emerging from the tree line, rifles raised. Professional, coordinated. Maggie raised her hands slowly, making no sudden moves. "Miss Margaret Hayes," one of them said, using her real name. "Mr. Brennan would like a word." "Then he should have come himself," Maggie replied calmly. "Oh, I'm here." The voice came from behind her. Maggie turned slowly to find a man in an expensive suit sitting on a gray horse, surrounded by 4 more armed guards. Marcus Brennan looked nothing like a monster. He was handsome, distinguished, with silver hair and cold eyes that assessed her like a piece of property. "You're smaller than I expected," he said conversationally. "My nephew talked you up so much before you killed him. Made you sound 10 feet tall and bulletproof." "Your nephew murdered a 12-year-old boy," Maggie said flatly. "And you murdered 7 men, including family." Brennan's smile was ice. "I think we're beyond moral high ground, don't you? What do you want?" "Originally, just to watch you suffer, make you helpless the way I was helpless when I got news of my nephew's death." He leaned forward in his saddle. "But then I learned you were protecting the Thornton girl. And I realized I could hurt you so much more thoroughly. Kill the child in front of you. Make you live with that failure. Then kill you slowly while Thornton watches." Rage flooded through Maggie, but she kept her expression neutral. "That's quite a plan." "I thought so," Brennan gestured to his men. "Take her." They moved forward. Maggie tensed, preparing to fight. Shots rang out. The hills erupted with gunfire as Jacob's men opened up from their concealed positions. 3 of Brennan's guards dropped immediately. The others scattered, returning fire wildly. Maggie drew and fired in one smooth motion, dropping the man closest to her. Chaos erupted, horses screaming, men shouting, bullets tearing through the morning air. Brennan wheeled his horse around, trying to escape. Maggie pursued on foot, her focus narrowed to just him. She saw Jacob emerge from the trees, rifle raised, saw him fire once, twice. Brennan's horse screamed and fell, throwing its rider. Brennan scrambled up, reaching for his pistol. Maggie was faster. "Don't," she said, her gun aimed at his chest. He froze. Around them, the gunfire was dying down as Brennan's men either fell or surrendered. James appeared, breathing hard, his own weapon drawn. "It's over," James told Brennan. "We have warrants for your arrest. Federal charges. You're done." Brennan looked at Maggie with pure hatred. "You destroyed my family." "Your nephew destroyed an innocent child," Maggie replied coldly. "I just ensured he paid for it, as you're about to." "You think you've won," Brennan laughed bitterly. "The Thornton girl will never be safe. I've put prices on both your heads. Every criminal between here and California knows about the bounty." Jacob appeared beside Maggie, fury written across his face. "You threaten my daughter one more time." "It's not a threat. It's a fact." Brennan spat blood. "You can lock me up, but the bounty stands. You'll be looking over your shoulders for the rest of your—" The shot came from nowhere. Brennan jerked backward, a red bloom spreading across his chest. He looked down in confusion, then crumpled. Everyone spun, weapons raised. A figure emerged from the rocks above, a young woman with a rifle, her face hard. "Payment rendered," she said flatly. "Brennan had my brother killed last year, said he'd pay anyone who brought him your head." She looked at Maggie. But I decided I'd rather collect the unofficial bounty some folks put on his. James raised his gun. Put the rifle down. Already done. The woman set it carefully on the ground. I'm not running. Just wanted to make sure that bastard died knowing someone from his own network did it. She allowed herself to be arrested without resistance, and Maggie watched Brennan's blood soaking into Montana soil, feeling hollow. It was done. The threat was ended. So why did she feel like something had been left unfinished? The aftermath took days to resolve. Federal marshals arrived to collect the surviving attackers and Brennan's body. Statements were taken, paperwork filed, reports written. Emma had been kept safe in the house during the confrontation, protected by Sarah and 2 armed guards. When Maggie finally returned, the girl ran to her and didn't let go for a full 5 minutes. "You came back," Emma kept saying. "You came back." "I promised I would," Maggie whispered against her hair. That night, after Emma was finally asleep, exhausted from crying, Maggie found Jacob on the porch. Their spot. "It's done," she said quietly. "Not quite." Jacob turned to her, and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. "You said I could ask when Emma was safe? When the threats were ended?" "Jacob, she's safe now. The threats are done. Brennan's dead. His organization is being dismantled, and the bounty he put out died with him." Jacob took both her hands. "So I'm asking." Maggie's heart hammered. "Asking what exactly?" "Stay. Not for 3 months. Not as an employee. Stay as my partner, my wife, Emma's mother." His voice roughened. "Stay because you love us, and we love you, and we want to build a life together." Everything in her wanted to say yes, but fear held her back. I don't know how to be a wife. A mother. I've spent my life learning how to protect people, not how to just live with them." "Then we'll learn together." Jacob pulled her closer. "Maggie, you're already Emma's mother in every way that matters. You're already my partner. The only thing missing is making it permanent. What if I'm not enough?" The fear finally broke free. "What if I fail you both?" "You won't. You can't know that." "I know you," Jacob said fiercely. "I know you'd die before letting harm come to Emma. I know you're brave and strong and more capable than you give yourself credit for. I know I love you. And Emma loves you. And we want you to stay." Tears spilled down Maggie's cheeks. "I want to stay too. God, Jacob, I want that so much it scares me." "Then say yes." "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes, I'll stay. I'll marry you. I'll be Emma's mother and your wife and—" Her voice broke. "I'll try to deserve you both." Jacob kissed her, deep and certain and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were crying. "You already deserve us," he said. "You've always deserved this. Deserved love and safety and home." She kissed him again, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally separated, she was smiling through tears. "We should tell Emma." "Tomorrow," Jacob said. "Tonight is just for us." They stood together under the stars, hands intertwined, planning a future that had seemed impossible just months ago. The woman who'd poured one last drink had found something she'd never expected. A rancher who saw her worth, a daughter who needed her strength, and a love that felt like coming home. Fair trade, she thought. More than fair. They told Emma the next morning over breakfast. The girl looked between them with growing hope. "Miss Maggie's staying?" she asked carefully, like she was afraid to believe it. "More than staying," Jacob said gently. "She's going to be part of our family, officially. I've asked her to marry me, and she said yes." Emma's face transformed. Pure joy replaced the wariness she'd carried for so long. She launched herself at Maggie, nearly knocking her chair over. "Really? You're really staying forever?" "Forever," Maggie promised, hugging her tight. "If you'll have me?" "Yes." Emma pulled back, eyes bright. "Can I call you Mama?" The question hit Maggie like a physical blow. She looked at Jacob, who nodded encouragement. "I'd like that very much," Maggie managed through the lump in her throat. Emma hugged her again, and this time when she said Mama, Maggie felt something shift deep in her chest. Like a piece she hadn't known was missing finally clicked into place. The wedding was held 2 months later under the wide Montana sky. Simple but beautiful, with wildflowers and string lights, and everyone from the ranch gathered to celebrate. Emma stood beside them, wearing a new dress and a smile that hadn't dimmed in weeks. When the minister asked who gave this woman, Emma said proudly, "She's already ours. We're just making it official." Laughter rippled through the gathered crowd. Maggie and Jacob spoke vows they'd written themselves, promises about partnership and protection, about choosing each other daily, about building something lasting from desperate beginnings. When Jacob slipped the ring on her finger, Maggie realized how far she'd come. From hiding in a saloon to standing here, surrounded by people who'd become family, marrying a man who saw all of her and loved what he found. "I choose you," Jacob whispered, echoing their first night together. "I choose you back," Maggie replied, "every day for the rest of our lives." The kiss sealed it. When they broke apart, Emma threw rice, enthusiastically and with questionable aim, while the crowd cheered. The celebration lasted until dark. There was music and dancing and toasts that grew increasingly silly as the evening wore on. Sarah pulled Maggie onto the dance floor, spinning her around while Jacob watched with a smile that made Maggie's heart full. Later, much later, they slipped away to the house they now officially shared. Emma had already fallen asleep in Sarah's care, exhausted from excitement. Maggie and Jacob stood in their bedroom, the room that was truly theirs now, and just looked at each other. "Mrs. Thornton," Jacob said, testing the name. "I like the sound of that," Maggie admitted. He pulled her close, kissing her with the tenderness that still surprised her. "You gave me something I'd lost," he said against her lips. "Hope. The belief that I could have this. Real love. Real partnership. After everything I'd lost. You gave me the same." Maggie traced his jaw. "You showed me I could be more than my past. That I could have a home." They made love slowly, celebrating the vows they'd just spoken, the future stretching before them like a gift. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Maggie thought about that night in the Silver Dollar. How she'd poured one last drink for a stranger and changed her entire life. "Best decision I ever made," she whispered. "What was?" Jacob's voice was drowsy. "Pouring you that whiskey." He laughed softly, pulling her closer. "Best decision I ever made was walking into that saloon." They fell asleep like that, two former strangers who'd become partners, lovers, family. And in her sleep, Maggie finally stopped running. 6 years. That's how long Maggie lived as Jacob Thornton's wife before the truth caught up with her. 6 years of waking up beside him, of watching Emma grow from a frightened 10-year-old into a confident young woman of 16. 6 years of building a life that felt real and permanent and utterly hers. And in all that time, she'd never told Jacob about the other secret she'd been carrying, the one that had sent her running to that saloon 6 years before she met him, the one she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself it never happened. It started with a letter. Maggie found it on Jacob's desk one morning while looking for the ranch ledgers. The envelope was addressed to him, but it bore a name that made her blood run cold. Margaret Hayes. Her real name, the one she'd abandoned 12 years ago. Her hands shook as she opened it. The words blurred at first, then came into sharp, terrible focus. Mr. Thornton. We regret to inform you that the woman you know as Maggie Hayes was previously married in Denver, Colorado 12 years ago. Documentation attached confirms her legal marriage to William Hayes on June 15, 1864. Additionally, records show she gave birth to a son, Michael Hayes, on April 3, 1865. The child was placed with her mother-in-law following William Hayes's death in 1866. We thought you should know the woman living in your house has been concealing these facts from you for the entire duration of your relationship. Respectfully, the Denver Municipal Records Office. The paper fell from Maggie's fingers. William, Michael. Names she hadn't allowed herself to think in years. The husband who'd beaten her until she'd learned to fight back. The son she'd been forced to leave behind when she'd finally escaped. The life she'd buried under layers of assumed names and carefully constructed lies. "Maggie?" She spun to find Jacob in the doorway, his expression unreadable. How long had he been standing there? "Jacob, The words caught in her throat. He crossed to the desk, picking up the fallen letter, read it slowly. When he looked up, his eyes were storm gray and completely closed to her. "Is it true?" She couldn't lie. Not to him. Not about this. "Yes." "You were married before." "Yes." "You have a son." "Had." Her voice cracked. "I haven't seen him in 12 years. Why?" Just one word, but it carried the weight of betrayal. Maggie sank into the nearest chair, her legs giving out. "William he was charming at first. Attentive. I was young and stupid and thought I was in love." She forced the words out. "After we married, he changed. The drinking started, then the hitting." Jacob's expression flickered, but he said nothing. "I got pregnant. Thought maybe a baby would help, would make him better." She laughed bitterly. "I was such a fool. It only got worse. He'd come home drunk, use me as a punching bag, then pass out. I lived like that for 2 years." "What happened?" "I killed him." The words came out flat. "He came at me one night, angrier than I'd ever seen him. Going for Michael's cradle, threatening to hurt the baby, I grabbed his pistol and shot him 3 times. Made sure he was dead." Jacob's hands clenched, but his face remained carefully neutral. "His mother, she saw what I'd done. Called me a murderer. Said she'd see me hang before she let me take her grandson." Maggie's voice broke. "I didn't have proof of the abuse. No witnesses who'd testify. And his mother had money, connections. I knew I'd lose Michael either way, to her or to the gallows. So you ran." "I took the name Hayes to honor Michael. Keep some connection even though I couldn't keep him." Tears streamed down her face. "I joined the Pinkertons, became someone else. Tried to atone by protecting people I couldn't protect my own son." Silence stretched between them. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jacob's voice was quiet, dangerous. 6 years, Maggie. 6 years of marriage, and you never thought to mention you had a child?" "Because I'm a coward." She met his eyes, letting him see her shame. "Because I was terrified you'd see me the way I see myself, as a woman who abandoned her son. As someone unworthy of Emma's love or yours. Did you think I wouldn't understand?" Anger crept into his voice now. "Did you think I'd judge you for surviving? I judged myself." The words exploded out of her. "Every day for 12 years I've judged myself. I see Michael's face when I close my eyes. Wonder if he remembers me. If he hates me for leaving. If he's even still... She couldn't finish the sentence. Jacob crossed to the window, putting distance between them. Who sent this letter? I don't know. Someone researched you. Dug up records from 12 years ago. Someone wanted me to know. He turned back, eyes hard. Who? I don't know, Maggie repeated. Jacob, please. I need time. He moved toward the door. I need to think. Jacob. Not now, Maggie. He stopped in the doorway without looking back. I can't. I need time. He left. And Maggie collapsed forward, head in her hands, feeling her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Emma found her an hour later, still sitting in the study, staring at nothing. Mama? The girl's voice was tentative. Papa just left. He looked upset. What happened? Maggie couldn't bring herself to lie, not to Emma. I kept something from him. From both of you. Something important. Emma sat in the chair across from her, expression serious. What? So Maggie told her. Everything. The abusive first marriage, the son she'd left behind, the years of running and hiding. Emma listened without interrupting, her face cycling through shock, sadness, and something that looked like understanding. When Maggie finished, silence hung heavy between them. You had a baby, Emma finally said. A son. Yes. My brother? The question hit Maggie like a physical blow. Not legally, not really, just, yes, really. Emma's voice was firm. If you're my mother, then he's my brother. Where is he now? I don't know. Maggie's voice cracked. His grandmother took him. I haven't seen him since he was 2 years old. We should find him. Maggie blinked. What? We should find him, Emma repeated. You've spent 12 years not knowing if he's okay. That has to be killing you, so we find him. Emma, it's not that simple. Why not? Emma leaned forward. Mama, you've spent your whole life protecting other people. Maybe it's time someone protected you, helped you get back something you lost. Your father is hurt, Emma interrupted gently, but he'll come around. He loves you. We both do. She took Maggie's hands. You made a choice to survive. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. Maggie pulled Emma into a hug, tears streaming. How did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. Emma pulled back, smiling through her own tears. So? We find my brother? Then we fix things with Papa? In that order? In that order. Emma stood, determination written across her face. Come on. Let's start with that letter. Someone sent it for a reason. We need to know who and why. The letter had come from Denver, but it wasn't actually from the municipal records office. That became clear after an hour of investigation. The real records office had no record of sending any correspondence to Jacob Thornton. Someone forged it, Emma said, studying the paper. Used official letterhead to make it look legitimate. But who? Maggie's mind raced. Who would know about my past? Who would care enough to expose me? Someone who wants to hurt you, Emma said slowly. Or hurt Papa through you. Who have we angered lately? Maggie thought back through the past 6 years. They'd made some business rivals, inevitably, turned down offers to sell land, stood up against some of the larger ranchers who wanted to monopolize water rights. But none of that explained knowing her specific history. Unless, Emma said, voice dropping, this isn't about now. What if it's about before? Before? Before you came here, your Pinkerton days, you said you made enemies. Emma's eyes widened. What if this is connected to Brennan? What if someone from his organization survived, Maggie finished grimly, and has been biding their time? The possibility sent ice through her veins. Brennan's network had been large, well-connected. They'd dismantled the main operation 6 years ago, but some pieces could have escaped notice. "We need to tell Papa," Emma said. "He doesn't want to see me right now." "Too bad." Emma stood, chin raised with stubborn determination that reminded Maggie powerfully of Jacob. "This isn't just about your feelings anymore. If someone's targeting our family again, he needs to know." She was right. Maggie knew she was right. They found Jacob in the barn, currying one of the horses with more force than necessary. He looked up when they entered, his expression closing off when he saw Maggie. "Emma, give us a moment." "No, sir," Emma said firmly. "This concerns all of us." She explained their theory quickly, efficiently. As she spoke, Jacob's anger shifted into something else: concern, wariness, the protective instinct that had made him hire Maggie in the first place. "You think Brennan's people are coming after us again?" he asked when Emma finished. "I think someone wants us afraid," Maggie said quietly. "And they're using my past to accomplish it." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then, "We need to contact James." Relief flooded through Maggie. Not forgiveness, but partnership. Focused on the problem at hand rather than the hurt between them. "I'll send a wire," she said. "No." Jacob finally met her eyes. "I'll do it. You and Emma stay close to the house. If someone's watching, waiting for a reaction, we don't give them one." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement that their problems could wait until the immediate threat was addressed. Maggie would take it. James arrived 3 days later with news that complicated everything. "I found your son," he said without preamble. Maggie's world tilted. "What?" "Michael Hayes, currently going by Michael Morrison. Age 14, living in Oregon with his grandmother." James pulled out a photograph. Maggie's hand shook as she took it. The boy in the picture was almost a young man. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes that looked eerily like her own. "He's beautiful," she breathed. "He's also in danger," James said grimly. "His grandmother died 6 months ago. He's been living with a cousin who's been less than kind. According to local law, there have been complaints of neglect." "I have to go to him." Maggie looked at Jacob, pleading. "I know things are complicated between us, but I have to." "Go," Jacob said quietly. "Of course you have to go. He's your son." "Will you come with me?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Jacob was silent for a long moment. Then, "Yes." Relief and surprise warred in Maggie's chest. "Thank you." "Emma's coming too," Jacob added. "If Michael is your son, that makes him family. We face this together." The journey to Oregon took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of strained but civil conversation. 2 weeks of Jacob maintaining careful distance while Emma tried to bridge the gap between them. They found Michael in a small logging town, working in a sawmill despite his young age. When he emerged at the end of his shift, covered in sawdust and exhaustion, Maggie's breath caught. He looked so much like William. But his eyes, those were hers. James made the introduction carefully. "Michael, these people would like to speak with you about your mother." The boy's expression hardened. "I don't have a mother. She left." The words cut Maggie to the bone, but she forced herself to stay calm. "You're right. I did leave, and I'm not here to make excuses or ask forgiveness. I just wanted to make sure you're all right." Michael's tough exterior cracked slightly. "Why now? Why, after all these years?" "Because I'm a coward," Maggie said honestly. because I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid I didn't deserve to be in your life. But your grandmother died and you're in a bad situation, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try to help. Help how? Suspicion colored his tone. Jacob stepped forward. My name is Jacob Thornton. I'm married to your mother. We have a ranch in Montana. If you're willing, we'd like to offer you a home there. Michael looked between them, confusion replacing some of the anger. You're married? For 6 years, Maggie confirmed. And this is Emma, She hesitated. Your sister, Emma finished firmly. Not by blood, but by choice. If you'll have us. Michael's tough facade crumbled completely. Tears filled his eyes even as he tried to blink them away. You want me? Yes, Maggie said, her own voice breaking. If you'll give me a chance. Give us a chance. I'm angry, Michael said quietly. At you. At grandmother. At everyone who let me end up here. You have every right to be, Maggie acknowledged. I won't ask you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking you to come with us. To have a family. To be safe. Michael wiped his eyes roughly. I don't know how to be part of a family. Neither did I, Emma said softly. But Mama taught me. And Papa. We'll teach you too. Michael looked at Jacob. You're really okay with this? Taking in some kid you don't know? You're not some kid, Jacob said firmly. You're Maggie's son. That makes you important. That makes you ours. The certainty in his voice made even Maggie's eyes fill with tears. Okay, Michael whispered. Okay, I'll come. They stayed in Oregon for another week, settling Michael's affairs, packing the few belongings he had. During that time, Maggie watched Jacob interact with the boy. Firm but kind, patient, despite the wall Michael had built around himself. One night, after Michael and Emma had gone to sleep in the hotel rooms James had secured, Maggie found Jacob on the balcony. Thank you, she said quietly, for doing this, for accepting him. He's your son. Jacob's voice was still distant but softer than before. I might be hurt, Maggie, but I'm not cruel. That boy deserves a chance. Do we? She made herself ask the question. Deserve a chance? Jacob was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he finally admitted. You lied to me for 6 years. Every day we were together, you were keeping this secret. I know. It makes me question what else you might be hiding. The accusation stung because it was fair. Nothing. I swear, Jacob, this was the last secret, the biggest one, the one I was most ashamed of. Shame I understand, Jacob said. What I don't understand is not trusting me enough to tell me, even after years of marriage. Even after everything we'd been through. Maggie had no defense. You're right. I should have told you. Why didn't you? Because I was terrified you'd see me differently, that you'd realize I wasn't the woman you thought I was. She forced herself to continue. You fell in love with Maggie, the fearless protector, not Margaret, the woman who abandoned her child to save herself. You didn't abandon him to save yourself, Jacob said, finally turning to look at her. You left him to save him. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. His voice was fierce. You killed an abuser. His mother had the power to destroy you, to take Michael anyway and see you hanged in the bargain. You made an impossible choice. That doesn't make you a coward, it makes you human. Maggie's tears finally spilled over. I don't feel human. I feel like a monster. Jacob closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. You're not a monster. You're just someone who's been carrying too much for too long. She clung to him, sobbing against his chest. I'm so sorry. For lying. For not trusting you. For all of it. I know. His hand stroked her hair. I'm still hurt, Maggie. Still angry. But I love you. That doesn't just disappear because you made a mistake. Even a mistake this big? Even then. He pulled back to look at her. But no more secrets. Ever. We rebuild trust from here, but that means complete honesty moving forward. I promise. She meant it with every fiber of her being. No more secrets. Then we'll find our way through this, Jacob said. Together. The return to Montana was different from the journey out. Michael sat with Emma in the wagon, the two of them slowly building a tentative sibling relationship. Maggie watched them, heart full despite the lingering hurt between her and Jacob. When the ranch came into view, Michael's eyes widened. This is all yours? Ours, Jacob corrected, including yours now. The hands greeted them warmly, and Sarah immediately took Michael under her wing, showing him to a room that had been hastily prepared. Emma dragged him off to show him the horses, leaving Maggie and Jacob alone in the front hall. We need to address the other thing, Jacob said quietly. The forged letter. The threat. Maggie nodded. James found traces. He thinks it was sent by someone connected to Brennan's old organization. They've been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Why expose your past instead of just attacking directly? Because they learned from Brennan's mistake. Direct confrontation failed. This time they wanted to destroy us from the inside, break apart the family so we'd be vulnerable. Jacob's expression hardened. It almost worked. But it didn't. Maggie took his hand. We're still here, still standing, still together. What do we do about them? We hunt them down, Maggie said simply, before they can hurt anyone else. The hunt took 3 months. James coordinated with other Pinkerton agents, tracking the remaining members of Brennan's network across 3 territories. It was methodical, careful work, identifying players, building cases, coordinating with local law enforcement. During that time, Michael slowly integrated into ranch life. He was wary at first, expecting the other shoe to drop, expecting to be sent away. But Emma's unwavering acceptance and Jacob's steady presence wore down his defenses. Maggie watched her son blossom, watched him learn to smile again, to trust again, watched him bond with Jacob over ranch work, with Emma over books and horses. One evening, 2 months after his arrival, Michael found Maggie on the porch. "Can we talk?" he asked, hesitantly. "Of course." He sat in the chair beside her, quiet for a long moment. "I've been angry at you for so long, since I was old enough to understand that other kids had mothers and I didn't." Maggie's throat tightened. "You have every right." "Let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I've been angry. But being here, seeing you with Emma, with Jacob, I'm starting to understand why you left. Michael, Grandmother told me you killed my father. She made it sound like murder, like you were evil." His voice wavered. "But I remember him. Not much, but enough. I remember being scared when he'd come home, remember hiding, and I remember you always putting yourself between him and me." Tears streamed down Maggie's face. "You didn't abandon me," Michael said firmly. "You saved me. If you'd stayed, if you'd fought Grandmother and lost, I would have been raised by someone who saw my father as a saint. Someone who might have taught me to be like him." He reached for her hand. "You gave me a chance at a different life, even if it meant leaving. I understand that now. I thought about you every day," Maggie whispered. "Every single day." "I know." Michael squeezed her hand. "I can see it in your eyes when you look at me. like you're trying to memorize my face in case I disappear again. I'm terrified you will. I'm not going anywhere. He smiled, tentative but real. I'm home. Maggie pulled him into a hug, and for the first time in 12 years, she held her son without guilt or fear clouding the moment. Later, Jacob found them still on the porch, Michael's head on Maggie's shoulder as she told him stories from his early childhood. "Room for one more?" Jacob asked. "Always," Maggie said. He sat on her other side, and the three of them watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Thank you," Maggie said to Jacob, "for giving him a home, for giving us both a chance." "He's a good kid," Jacob said simply. "Anyone can see that." "He is," pride filled her voice. "Despite everything, he turned out good." "Because of you," Jacob corrected. "You might not have raised him, but you protected him when it mattered. That counts." Michael looked between them. "Are you two okay now? Really okay?" Maggie and Jacob exchanged a glance. "We're getting there," Jacob said honestly. "It's not perfect yet, but we're working on it." "Good." Michael's voice was firm. "Because I didn't survive all this to have my new family fall apart." Emma appeared in the doorway. "Dinner's ready. And Sarah made your favorite, Michael." "I have a favorite?" Michael looked surprised. "You do now," Emma said, grinning. "Come on." They all went inside together. A patchwork family built from secrets and second chances, but a family nonetheless. The attack came on a Tuesday. Maggie was teaching Michael to shoot when James's warning arrived via urgent telegram. One of Brennan's surviving lieutenants had been spotted heading toward Montana, a man named Carson Reid, known for holding grudges and finishing jobs. "He's coming for you," James wrote. "Probably within the week. Prepare accordingly." Jacob assembled the hands immediately. They'd done this before, knew the drill. Perimeter watches were established, weapons distributed, vulnerable points reinforced. But this time felt different. This time they had more to lose. Emma and Michael were sent to stay with Sarah's sister in town under heavy guard. Both protested loudly. "I'm not a child," Emma argued. "I'm 16. I can fight." "You can also be safe," Jacob interrupted firmly. "Please, Emma, for my peace of mind." Michael was more direct. "I just found my family. I'm not leaving them to face danger alone." "You're not leaving us," Maggie said gently. "You're protecting us by removing one more thing we'd have to worry about. Please, Michael, do this for me." Reluctantly, they agreed. Maggie watched them ride away with an armed escort, her heart in her throat. "They'll be safe," Jacob said, reading her expression. "You can't know that." "No, but I can do everything in my power to make sure we survive to see them again." The attack came 3 nights later. Reid brought 6 men, professional killers who moved with coordinated precision. They hit the ranch just after midnight, when most of the hands would be sleeping. But Jacob's preparations held. The first wave ran into tripwires and alarms, giving the defenders time to mobilize. Gunfire erupted across the compound. Maggie fought from the main house, picking off attackers with mechanical precision. Years of training had honed her into a weapon, and she used every skill now. Beside her, Jacob commanded the defense with calm authority. Together they were formidable. But Reid was cunning. While his men attacked from the front, he circled around to the back of the house, slipping through a window they'd left unwatched. Maggie heard the glass break and spun, but Reid was already inside, gun raised. "Finally," he said, smiling. "Brennan's bitch. He died because of you. Now you get to join him." "You'll have to shoot me first," Maggie said coldly. "That's the plan." He fired. Maggie dove, but the bullet caught her shoulder, spinning her around. She hit the floor hard, pain exploding through her arm. Reid advanced, raising his gun for a killing shot. Jacob appeared in the doorway, rifle blazing. Reid fell, clutching his chest, shock written across his face. "You killed me," he gasped. "You threatened my wife," Jacob said flatly. "What did you expect?" Reid died, still looking surprised. Jacob crossed to Maggie, dropping to his knees beside her. "How bad?" "I've had worse." She tried to sit up, gasping at the pain. "Is it over?" "James just signaled the all clear. Reid's men are either dead or captured." Jacob carefully examined her shoulder. "You're bleeding badly." "It'll heal." She gripped his arm. "Jacob, Save it." But his voice was gentle. "Let's get you patched up first. Then we'll talk." The doctor declared her lucky. The bullet had gone clean through without hitting bone. 6 weeks of recovery, and she'd be fine. Emma and Michael returned 2 days later. Both immediately rushed to Maggie's bedside, relief and fear warring on their faces. "You were shot," Emma said accusingly. "You promised you'd be careful." "I was careful," Maggie protested. "He just got lucky." "Papa shot him," Michael said with satisfaction, "right through the heart." "Your father saved my life," Maggie acknowledged. Again, Jacob appeared in the doorway. "Emma, Michael, give us a moment." They left reluctantly. Jacob sat in the chair beside Maggie's bed, taking her uninjured hand. "You scared me," he said quietly. "I scared myself. When I saw Reid pointing that gun at you, when I heard the shot." His voice broke. "I thought I'd lost you." "But you didn't. I'm still here. This time." Jacob's grip tightened. "What about next time, Maggie? What about the threat we don't see coming?" "There's always going to be threats," Maggie said gently. "That's the life we've chosen. But Jacob, we're still here. We're still fighting. Still together." "I know." He raised her hand to his lips. "And I don't want to lose that. Lose you. Which is why we need to really talk. No more putting it off." "Okay." "I'm still hurt," Jacob said honestly. "About the lies. About Michael. About 6 years of not trusting me enough to tell me the truth." "I know. But watching you nearly die made me realize something. I'd rather have you with secrets than not have you at all." His eyes held hers. "I love you, Maggie. The real you. The woman who survived abuse and made impossible choices. The woman who killed to protect her child. The woman who's been trying to atone for things that weren't her fault." Tears spilled down Maggie's cheeks. "I love you too, so much that it terrifies me." "Then let's be terrified together," Jacob said. "No more secrets, no more hiding. We face everything as partners. Can you do that?" "Yes," Maggie promised. "Yes, I swear it." He leaned forward, kissing her gently. "Then we'll find our way through this." "Together," Maggie agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, hands joined, both aware of how close they'd come to losing everything. But they hadn't. They'd survived. And that was worth everything. 1 year later, Maggie stood on the same porch where she and Jacob had shared their first real conversation. But this time, she wasn't alone. Michael and Emma were in the yard, teaching the new ranch hands how to properly saddle horses. Their easy camaraderie spoke of genuine sibling affection built over months of shared experiences. Jacob emerged from the house, sliding his arms around Maggie's waist from behind. She leaned back against him, content in a way she'd never thought possible. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That night," she said, "in the saloon, when you asked for one last drink." "Best whiskey I ever had," she laughed. "It was terrible whiskey." "It brought me you," Jacob said simply. "That makes it the best." They watched their children, because that's what Michael had become, officially adopted 6 months ago. Bicker good-naturedly over the proper technique for checking a saddle's girth. "I've been thinking," Maggie said slowly, "about the past. About the lies I told." "Maggie." "Let me finish." She turned in his arms to face him. "I spent 12 years hiding who I was, ashamed of the choices I'd made, convinced I didn't deserve happiness or love or family." She cupped his face. "You gave me all of that anyway. You and Emma. And now Michael. You gave me a life I never thought I could have. You earned it," Jacob said firmly. "By protecting Emma. By choosing to stay. By being brave enough to face your past when it came for you." "I want to stop running," Maggie said. "From my past, from my mistakes, from the woman I used to be. I want to own all of it, the good and the bad, and move forward." "What does that look like?" "It looks like this." She gestured to the ranch, the children, the life they'd built. "It looks like choosing love over fear, choosing family over isolation, choosing to believe I deserve this." Jacob pulled her closer. "You've always deserved it. I'm glad you're finally starting to see that." Emma called from the yard. "Mama, Michael says I'm doing it wrong." "You are doing it wrong," Michael protested. "Both of you." "Hush," Maggie called back, smiling. "I showed you the right way yesterday." "And I was right," Emma muttered, but she adjusted her technique anyway. Jacob laughed quietly. "Never a dull moment." "Never," Maggie agreed, "and I wouldn't change it for anything." That evening, after the children were asleep and the ranch had settled into quiet, Maggie and Jacob sat on the porch in their usual spot. "Tell me something," Jacob said. "If you could go back to that night in the saloon, knowing everything that would happen, the threats, the danger, the pain, would you still pour me that drink?" Maggie didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Even knowing you'd have to face your past? Confront everything you'd been hiding?" "Even then." She took his hand. "Because all of it, every hard moment, every scar, every secret that came to light, led me here. To you, to Emma and Michael, to home." "Home," Jacob repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge as darkness deepened. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly. Night birds called to each other. The ranch breathed its familiar rhythms. "You know what the crazy part is?" Maggie said eventually. "What?" "I came to your ranch thinking I'd protect your daughter for 3 months and leave. Just another job. Another place to hide." She smiled. "Instead, I found everything I've been running from, and everything I didn't know I needed." Jacob pulled her close. "Best bodyguard I ever hired." "I wasn't actually a bodyguard," she pointed out. "You protected what mattered most to me," Jacob said seriously. "My daughter, my heart, my family." He kissed her forehead. "That makes you the best bodyguard there is." Maggie thought about the woman she'd been, the scared girl who'd killed her abusive husband, the mother who'd left her son to save him, the operative who'd buried herself in work to avoid confronting her pain. That woman was still part of her, would always be part of her. But she was also the woman who'd chosen to stay when she could have run, who'd fought for a family that wasn't hers by blood, but became hers by choice. Who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when you were terrified, especially then. "I love you," she said to Jacob, simple words that meant everything. "I love you too," he replied. "Always have, always will." They stayed like that until the night grew cold. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something lasting from desperate beginnings. The rancher and his bodyguard, the man searching for protection, and the woman hiding from